Good morning again, everybody. So today we continue our series on the creation story. We've entitled it Recreating You, because that's essentially what the story is about. Last week we looked at the idea of science versus religion to see that science is the authority on the things of this world and that religion of the Bible is the authority on the Lord's kingdom. And so as we read the Lord's word, we don't have to get caught up in the physical time and space of things, but think in terms of heavenly and spiritual ideas. And so as we come to the story of creation, the 7 days of creation, it's a story of our recreation, of our rebirth from one world into the next. And so we continue that story today by looking at day 2 and 3 together in one day, or in one talk. So today, we're going to be looking at 1, 2, and 3 together. The first 3 days really are focusing in on you being able to become aware of who you really are, or becoming more aware of what is inside you, more fully aware of what is happening internally in your life. And we see this particularly in day 2. In day 2, we have the dividing of waters, and that carries with it a dividing in our minds of things that are important from not so important. And then day 3, we see things starting to grow. We see something useful happening out of our lives. I want to speak to our life as we find it most days, when we're not particularly feeling comfortable or feeling well or feeling like we're in control or having a bit of a difficult day. We can compare it to riding a horse. I don't know much about riding a horse. I've watched people do it, but watching is another thing from actually riding it. But imagine that you knew nothing about riding a horse, and you got onto the horse. Would you know how to get it to move? And if it was moving, would you know how to get it to stop? Would you be able to turn it? Would you be able to get where you wanted to go on the horse? Or would you be just a passenger on that horse? And whatever the horse decides to do, so you get taken along. If it decides to stop, well, then I guess we stop. If it decides to go, well, then I'm in that direction. And I want to go this way, but it turns the other direction. And life can feel like that sometimes, like we are a passenger in our life, that things are happening to us and around us, and we aren't really in control. We don't know how to deal with it. We are reactive to everything that is happening rather than having some sure, strong place from which to live our life. And so we find ourselves at the mercy of others. When someone speaks badly about us, it impacts our self-worth. And we measure our self-worth by what other people are thinking and saying about us. When we are the passenger on the horse or the passenger in our life, we are easily swayed by opinions that are around us. Where is society going? And that's where I want to go. Where is social media taking me? That's where I want to go. Where are the popular people going? That's where I want to go. And so we find ourselves being pulled around from place to place because we're only a passenger in our life. We get easily distracted in our life by cravings of this world. We can get distracted by going to eat at nice places to eat, or seeking out entertainment or thrill events, or something that makes us feel good. We can be drawn to addictions, things of physical nature. So we can be pulled and pushed and swayed and blown back and forth in our life if we are not strong, if we don't have a foundation upon which we rest, if we don't know how to operate, as it were, our life, if we are just a passenger on the horse, then we go wherever life takes us. We react to whatever life is throwing at us. But the Lord wants to take us to a different place. The Lord wants us to have more control and a steadfast foundation in our life where we aren't swayed, where we aren't measured by what other people think, where we aren't trying to measure up to what people and things say around us that we should be like. So day 1 or day 2 is the importance of understanding deeply about our first important spiritual reality, and that is that we have an external self and we have an internal self. Without that knowledge, we cannot grow. Without that knowledge, we will always be a passenger in our life. So we have an outer life that feels and thinks in outward ways, but we also have an inner life of inner thought and inner feeling that is from the Lord, that is geared towards a higher reality. Our outer self is geared towards thinking and feeling in this natural world, and our inner self is geared towards awakening to the heavenly things, the heavenly thoughts, heavenly feelings. So I want to read from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 6 to 13. And this is just the story of creation. So we'll get it in its fullness. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament. And he divided the waters that were under the firmament from the waters that were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth. And the gathering together of the waters he called the seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, the fruit trees yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And so day 2, with the creation of the firmament, is that awakening to the knowledge that we have an internal self. We have an internal life that is separate from this external life that we live. Like I've already said, this is the most important idea to have in our minds if we want to grow spiritually. Without this idea, we can't grow. And so we see it here in the second day. It's that important. Right? We need to have it. It's the firmament that the Lord creates. Because what happens when we have that firmament, when we have that idea of the internal self, is we also have the idea that there are things higher than myself. There are things higher than this world, that there is the Lord, that there is his kingdom. And with that idea in our minds, we then go to the waters. Remember, day 1 had waters too. And the waters represent all the ideas that we have. once we have an internal self and have a knowledge of higher things and lower things, then we can look at our lives and look at all the knowledge that we have gathered together and start to separate out in our minds, well, what are the higher ideas? What are the ideas that are not of time and space? What are the ideas that are outside of this physical world? The things of love to my neighbor, thoughtfulness and caring, the things of heaven, the things of the Lord. All of those are higher principles. And the waters under the firmament are all those ideas that support those heavenly things, but in our natural lives. So we know that we should love our neighbor. So what does it look like in my day? How do I show that love to my neighbor? How do I show care and thoughtfulness? And so we have to have sort of a practical way to express that idea. So the firmament is that inner self with the ability to see the higher truths that the Lord teaches us from His Word and see the supporting truths in our natural life, the ideas that will help us put those things into action. And that firmament is then called heaven. Heaven. Why heaven? Because in that inner self, the inner self has the ability to hold the good things and the true things from the Lord. It's that inner self that's going to connect with the Lord. And so whatever is able to connect to the Lord or hold what is of the Lord's, that is heaven. And so that inner self of ours is heaven within us, when we have those good and true things from the Lord. I want to read to you from the book Secrets of Heaven, number 24 by Emanuel Swedenborg. And it's describing what I've just talked about. The Spirit of God then makes a distinction between the inner and the outer being, and between the religious knowledge that we possess in our inner selves and the secular knowledge belonging to our outer selves. And the inner self is called the expanse. The knowledge in the inner self is called the waters over the expanse, and the facts belonging to our outer self are called the water under the expanse. And so those are important ideas that we take forward with us as we go into our spiritual life. And in day 3, we see the Lord saying, gathering those waters together and putting them in their place. That idea of the internal self, those distinctions that you've made between higher and lower truths, now become part of your memory. The Lord stores them away in our memories. And then the Lord creates the land. If we think to the New Testament, we think of the story of the sower and the good ground and the stony ground. Or we think of all the stories about crops and grains and fruit trees and vines. There's a lot of imagery in the Bible about plants and lands and growing. And this is mirrored here in this third day. That land that the Lord makes appear is the preparation that the Lord has done in our lives, in our minds, so that we are able to now receive those true ideas into our life. The good ground is our minds that is able to receive the true ideas from the Lord's Word. So like I spoke about with the kids, planting the seed, the Lord helps to plant those seeds in our minds, those true ideas that He has for us of how we should live, and then the land brings forth growth. It's interesting that it's the land that brings forth that growth. It's not the Lord brings forth the growth. Because in those words, it's describing who is doing the work. When we're growing spiritually and we're trying to follow the Lord, we start from a selfish place. Remember, we're talking about our spiritual growth. And we can't do anything good or anything from good yet because we're not good. We don't know what good is. And so when we are first called to the journey with the Lord, it comes from a selfish place. But the Lord nevertheless says, it is good. That's the way it works. That's where it all begins. We participate in this process. We take these truths as we see them and we apply them in our lives and we do the good work that we see as good, but it's coming from self. So it's going to be muddied and it's going to be a bit unclear and it's not actually going to be good yet. But the Lord uses it. The Lord says this is the way it's supposed to be. Because if we start doing something, there in doing it, the Lord is able to teach us something more. Take, for example, vacuuming the house. I did this yesterday. I vacuumed the house. And I thought to myself, I'm going to do this mindfully. I'm going to pay attention to what is going through my mind as I vacuum the house. So I vacuumed the house. And it's interesting to feel what happens with you as you go through the vacuuming process. You might start off with good intentions. I'm going to do this. I'm going to enjoy this. It's going to be nice to have a clean house. And you start off well. And along the way, you discover hidden things that should have been thrown away or put in the wash, or you can't get under this, or this is heavy to move, and you start getting tired and you start getting frustrated and you start getting angry and you start getting resentful. Well, why me? Why am I doing it and not somebody else doing it? Right? It started off well. It starts off with good intentions, but because it's not coming from a place of love that is from the Lord, but from a selfishness mixed in there, as we go through the process, there is something for us to learn if we are mindful while we are doing it. And what we discover is that there is still darkness in us, right? There is still selfishness in us. There is still anger and frustration and resentment in us, which brings us to a new dawn, a new day one, which leads us to day two, where we have to reassess the knowledges that we have and reorder and recast some of those knowledges so that next time I do the vacuuming, I can try something different. I can pay more attention. I can think about it in a different way to learn something new about the darkness that's in me so I can go back to day one, to day two, to day three. And so the important thing about this process, or this creation story, is it is a process, one that's continually repeating itself over and over, that we don't move monolithically through the days, that we're constantly learning new things about ourselves as we take the ideas that we've learned and apply them to our lives. And so what are the things that you do in your life? And what are the intentions that you go in with, and what is the result on the other side? Do you still have those good feelings within you? So there's lots to learn while we do what we are doing. If we are mindful, if we are paying attention, if we're using every moment as a teaching moment, as a moment for the Lord to educate us about that darkness that still exists. And so this is a process that the Lord calls us to over and over in different ways, in many ways. But we notice the plants that grow. They also progress. First, it is just the simple grass. And then it's a herb that bears seeds, and then eventually something that bears fruit. And the tasks that we do start off just being those grass tasks, right? We do them, and they don't really result in anything positive. It takes us back. We learn something new, we try again, right? It brings new seeds. Go back to the beginning, try again, get a little bit further until what we're doing bears more fruit. And we'll see in day 4, which is next week, what that leads into. So we are all called to this process. Day 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. And over and over again. And it's the process about getting to know who we are. Getting to know, well, what is my external life, my outer life like, and what is this internal life supposed to be? And so the more we do and the more we learn, we're learning more and more about ourselves. Right? The discovery of our internal self isn't just, oh, now I understand. But it's clarifying our thoughts, investigating our feelings over and over again so that we are more and more productive, more and more fruitful in the things that we do. They become closer and closer to what the Lord can then move forward with on the days to come. So your task for the week, or our task for the week, because I struggle with it too, right, is to be mindful in the things that you do. So it requires, first of all, to have an intention going in. So what is the work that you're about to approach? What is your intention? Is my intention to be loving? Is it my intention to be more open-minded? What am I hoping to get from this experience? Right? What are those heavenly qualities that I want to bring to this work that I am doing? And then to be mindful. While you are doing that work, what are you discovering about yourself? What are the thoughts that are happening within your mind? What are the feelings that are being stirred within you as you come up against people who have different ideas or different opinions? Right? Are you being drawn away to want to do things my way, or want control, or getting frustrated or angry? Where are you able to stay in the good intentions and the good thoughts, and where aren't you able to stay in those? And learn from where we aren't able to. Rethink things, clarify what went wrong, what can I try differently, and then bring that back to the task the next time. And so that's our task. Can we be mindful? Can we go in knowing what we would like to bring to this? Can we monitor where we're going wrong? And can we learn from that, take it back to the Lord, back into our lives? And so that's the process and the task that we can do over and over, multiple times a day, every day. Every moment is a teaching moment for the Lord. He can use it to teach us about ourselves and what are the qualities within. I want to finish with a reading from the book Heaven and Hell, also by Emanuel Swedenborg, number 444. Our being spirits inwardly has reference to our capacity for thinking and intending. So to be spiritual, that inner being, is that capacity of thinking and intending, because these are our actual inner natures. They are what make us human. And that's an interesting point, right? That ability to think inwardly, that ability to intend inwardly, is our human nature. That is the part of us that is created in the image and the likeness of God. That inner nature, that heaven within, that's where the Lord is. That's where His likeness can exist. And the qualities of our humanity depends on the quality of our thinking and intending. Amen.